Well, good Friday evening, everyone. And once again, welcome to the podcast. I'm Al Vasho, and thanks to the thousands of people who have continued to join us in our humble beginnings with these podcasts. We're really humbled and glad that you're here. Now, don't forget, just in case there are technical issues and the live stream drops or anything like that, you want to give us a couple of minutes, but you want to keep checking back at rumble.com/user/ianjuby/live, and that link will take you back to the live stream, the one that's running at the time. So again, if we drop the feed, no worries, give us a couple of minutes. Check back at rumble.com/user/ianjuby, that's IANGUJUBY at or slash live dot I messed that one up. Rumble.com/user/ianjuby/live. That'll get you back on track with whatever live stream is happening at that time. So once again, thanks for joining us. I'm one of your hosts, Al Vasho, with my illustrious and well-known co-host, Ian Juby. How you doing?
I'm doing okay. Your audio is cutting out just a little bit. Is mine distorting? I can't hear myself, so let me know if it is.
A little bit distorted, yes.
It is? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to try and turn it down just a little, because we had a huge problem with that last week. And but while I'm doing that, I will explain real quick. So anybody who's on Rumble, if you click right here, you can do what they call a Rumble rant, and basically you put your comment there, but you give a tip and it supports the podcast. So far, I've been paying for everything myself. So I mean, like, I paid for Alan's gas money and everything to come up last week, which of course the gas money, that was like a remortgage of the house with the gas prices nowadays. But
it's like
anyway,
$600,000 Canadian.
Exactly. So no, is that still distorted?
A little bit. It seems a little high.
Just clipping on the end, okay? And give me 1 second. Where is? I'm in the wrong place. Oh, wait, that was the right place. No, that's not the right place. So anyway, we have the Rumble Rants, so you can do that. And as well, actually, I turned it down in studio, and that on you were clipping a little, and that seemed to help you as well. So is that helping me?
That seems to have helped. Doesn't seem to
Okay.
be as distorted.
Okay, cool. Okay, well, I'll just keep trying that. That was why I switched to Restream this week, because it seemed to be, I had all these nice volume controls and level monitoring and everything, because I couldn't hear myself. I still can't hear myself, but at least this way I can see if it's redlining or what all is going on. So another way to help fund the show, if you help fund the podcast, if you would like. We've been talking about UFOs, aliens, and Genesis and whatnot a lot the past several weeks. And so I have a deal on right now at ianjuby.org. And if you head over to the, what do you call that? The store, then you can get this 2-part DVD set or 2-disc set. It's actually 4 parts. It's about 2 hours worth of content. So when we had Joe and Guy on, we kind of glossed over a lot of the topic and just kind of blasted into it like everybody understood what we were talking about. And there's a lot of history there, a lot of research. Now, granted, when we did the podcast on the whistleblower, the UFO whistleblower from the Air Force, I actually showed some new information that's not in the discs, for what it's worth. But anyway, they're on sale for another, I think, week. So that's another way to help support the show. You can get them a Blu-ray as well, so full high definition. And so I'm going to remove that now.
And we should mention, just while we're switching over and stuff, that the Rumble Rants, any money that is sent to us through the Rumble Rants, that Rumble, very much like the YouTube rants and so on, or not the rants, but the paid comment section, super chats, thank you, that 100% goes to the content creators for the year of 2023, which is kind of nice.
That's true. Yes, that's true. I totally forgot about that. And also, we want to remind everyone that the views expressed in this live stream are not necessarily those of the Board of Core Ottawa. We never approve anything, so we just... How's that expression? Better to ask forgiveness than to ask permission?
Yep.
Or easier to ask forgiveness? All right, and we do have the chats. Audio distorted. Yep. Thanks, Moose. We do have the chats. I'll try and keep an eye on it. And watch this, Al. Watch. Ooh. I'm going to show you something. Ooh.
You're going to love when Ian plays with
technology. Look at this.
Oh, hey.
We can bring the chats up, finally. So, anyway. So, Moose has joined us again for tonight. Thanks, Moose. Good to see you again. All righty. So, shall I just jump into it?
You know what? Let's get right into it. I know that you wanted to touch base on some of the stories, and I think I've got a few touch points in that. But yeah, jump right in.
Okay. Let's go. Yeah, and I want to hear your thing too. But we got it in the overview, in the queue. So we actually sort of kind of have an idea of what we're going to talk about and when and everything. So I hope everyone will be patient with me tonight. I'm going to share a lot of actually very personal stuff, and hopefully, if you'll be patient with me, I think you'll grasp why I'm sharing this stuff with you. And I'm also very much looking forward to hearing from Al, because he's going to share some personal stuff going on with him in ministry as well. And so, when I was 16 years old, I met a wonderful couple who would become like parents to me. Wayne and Carol Campbell. They were just starting up the world's first summer science camp. And they hired me on their second year. The only reason they didn't hire me on the first year was because they had already had the staff. And that was how I got my start teaching science and technology. And that was a long time ago. I'm not going to go in there. I'm not going to go there. We won't discuss how long ago. But so that was how I got my start. And from there, so I worked with them and lived with them too, on and off for several times during those 21 years I was at that camp. And then I went into full-time creation ministry. And when I went into full-time creation ministry for 10 years with my traveling museum, as I quit my job teaching at the high school, which Wayne and Carol got me that job, and I'm going to bring their name up a lot tonight. You're going to find out real short order just how often their name comes up. When I quit the job teaching at the high school and went on the road full time with my traveling creation museum into full-time creation ministry, as I was leaving, I believe the Lord told me very, very specifically, don't forget the children. And I'll be honest, at that time, I was kind of terrified of kids, even though I'd been working with kids since I was 16 years old. I was really good at it, but I don't know. I just felt really, what's the word? Insecure, I guess. What's the word where you don't feel like inadequate, I guess, or I didn't feel like I was up to that, right? And turned out it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because I took that to heart. I obeyed, and people started asking, when people were calling me up to book presentations, they asked, well, do you do children's stuff? And so I would say, yeah, I do. I've never done it before. I haven't got a clue what I'm doing, but I mean, yeah, I do, as a matter of fact. And it turned out to be one of the biggest blessings I ever had in my life. So fast forward, I moved back to Canada. Well, I never left Canada. I was just on the road a lot, in the States a lot. Came back to Canada, started producing Genesis Week. That's been 11 years running now. When I came back to Canada, it was a weekly show, and it's current events. So I couldn't leave home. I'm no longer on the road. I was producing. That was my ministry now, was producing Genesis Week, and did that for a few years, and wound up, as you know, Al, as many of the people know, kids are probably terrified of you too. Yeah, yeah, he's probably right.
Is that one of the comments?
Yes, that would be Tino. Yes, yes, they probably are. So anyway, I wound up working. So just as Stephen or Staddy and I finished our fundraiser for the Noah Flood movie, which big update coming on that right shortly. Steve's working on a trailer right now. We're going to do a fundraiser for the very last final push, and so I mean, it's been many years. We've put thousands of dollars out of our own pockets into this, 11 years of our lives into this, and you should see some of the stuff that's going to come out just in the trailer. It's pretty epic stuff. Steve's been working very hard. Anyway, I'll come back to that. So I wound up, I've been trying for a couple of years to get a job working with CN Rail, and wound up getting a job moving to Northern Alberta, and worked with them for 6.5 years. Now, a year and a half into it, unexpectedly, I was expecting to finish my career. I was only planning originally 3 to 5 years. But first of all, I really liked the job. I really enjoyed it. Way more than I thought it would. It paid the bills. It allowed me to produce Genesis Week, because I was producing Genesis Week from home anyway. And it paid the bills and allowed me to produce Genesis Week for several more years. And I was up in northern Alberta, wound up transferring to the thriving metropolis of Sioux Lookout, Ontario. And I'm curious if anybody in the chats has ever heard of Sioux Lookout, Ontario. I had literally never set foot in the town in my life, and here I am bidding on a job and pulling my seniority, my rank, and I got the job. And now you've got 2 weeks to pack up your house, move to Ontario, find a place to live, and move to this town I had literally never set foot in before in my life. And as it turns out, this was all totally God. in hindsight, I know this now. Even hiring on the CN, because I had to go to Sioux Lookout and I had to be there for a while. This wasn't just I couldn't go speak at the church for a week, then come back again the next year. No, I had to go and I had to live there. The reason for that, again, as I now know, is because Sioux Lookout is called the hub of the North for a reason. Sioux Lookout is the access point for dozens of First Nations reserves all throughout Northern Ontario. Majority of them are fly-in only. Some of them have winter roads, but the majority of them, it's fly-in or canoe-in. That's it.
Yeah, it's a very scarce population, isn't it? Isn't it like 5,000 or 55 people? It's not very big.
Yeah, the town itself is actually only about 3,000, 3,500. So it's about the size of Deep River here, you know.
Right.
But the long story with that, but they include the surrounding towns in that 5,500 number. But yes, Sioux Lookout, to give you an idea, so you brought up the population. Sioux Lookout had the fourth busiest airport in all of Ontario. This little town of 3,500 people, and that's why is because it's servicing all the First Nations reserves of remote northern Ontario. And I had to go to Sioux Lookout. So while I was in Sioux Lookout, I started my online courses in robotics, which is what I taught at the science camp. So for 21 years, I learned, I was Wayne and Carol's right-hand man. And I developed a whole pile of these science and tech programs with them, for them. We taught them together. We worked in the schools all throughout Renfrew County. And I basically learned how to teach science and technology. That prepared me for my time in ministry on the road, especially with children. And when I got to Sioux Lookout, on a whim, I wound up producing this online course. It was the latest rage was online courses. I'd signed up for a couple. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to give this a whirl. So I basically put my robotics program that I taught at the science camp in video format, just broke it up into video lessons, posted online, and it went through the roof. Last I looked, I think on Udemy alone, I had like 35,000 enrolled worldwide, just in my first course. I mean, it just absolutely took off. Hi, my name's Ian, and I have a drinking problem. Yeah, and here we are going to be talking about how I'm part Indian. Anyway, but anyway, so while I was producing this course and doing all this really cool new stuff, that I kept thinking, like, man, if only we had this at Hyla, the science camp, right? That was the name of the science camp, by the way, Hyla. I kept sending stuff to Wayne and Carol, saying, "Hey, check this out! This is pretty cool." And so out of the blue, Wayne emails me and he says, "Hey, I'd like you to consider rebooting the Hyla Science Camp. I'm serious. Give me a call." And so I gave him a call the next day. I had a conference call with him and Carol. And what he told me was not at all what I expected. So basically what he suggested, he said, focus on short-term workshops. And he gave me a couple of examples, but basically it's a one-day workshop, which was very radical. We had never done this before, and we were literally world leaders in science and tech education. We were some of the go-to people in the whole country. When it came to science and tech education, the Hyla Science Camp was who you called. And this was very radical. No one had done, still nobody's doing this that I know of. And so he suggested doing that. And so what I did was I set out to do an experiment. I did a one-day workshop. It was in electronics with a focus on robotics. And I did it in the thriving metropolis of Sioux Lookout, this little town of 3,500 people. And it was a full house. It was packed. I cleared $1,000 that day. That's what I took home. And we all had a blast. I had to limit the numbers And we just had a blast. It was a huge success. So one of the tips Carol gave me before I did this, she said the by far and away the best method of advertisement they had for the camp was in the halls of the shopping malls. So they would set up a table. Yeah, they would set up a table in the shopping mall and advertising the summer camp. That is where by far and away they got their most bookings. We didn't have a shopping mall in Sioux Lookout. We had Johnny's, the grocery store. So they let me set up in the grocery store. And so while I was set up there, I had like a large mobile robot frame that I was working on, and I was advertising my workshop, which was electronics with a focus on robotics. One-day workshop, and this lady comes up to me and she starts asking about, well, okay, what are you doing here? What is this? And I explained it all to her, and she's like, I'm charged with bringing educational programs like yours to the remote First Nations. Might you be interested in that? This was a huge experiment. I didn't even know if it was going to work. And so I'm like, well, yeah, I guess. I mean, I wasn't even looking that far ahead, right? So I got her name and her contact info and stuff, then promptly lost it in the 4 moves I made since then, and a global pandemic. But anyway, so ran the workshop. Well, one of the guys in the workshop is an older guy. He brought either 4 or 5 of his grandkids. I forget now. I think it was 5. I think he brought 5 of his grandkids to the workshop and rolled them in it. And they came out. We all had a blast. Well, I knew nothing about this guy. I'd never met him before. It turns out he was the counselor at a First Nations residential high school on the outskirts of Sioux Lookout that I didn't even know was there.
Oh,
and at the end of the day, he's like, you have to come to the high school and do this workshop. And so he arranged it. They paid for it. I don't know where he got the money because I had to charge a fortune. I was working for CN at the time. And to take a day off to do the workshop meant I had to count on missing a Winnipeg trip. So to take a train from Sioux Lookout to Winnipeg and back, take another train back, they paid us $1,500 over 2 days to do that trip. So that's what I had to charge. That was the minimum. Then on top of that, they wanted 20 electronics kits of my electronics kits. So that was it was a $2,000 day to do that workshop, and went there. It was a blast. We had a lot of fun. There was one kid at the back. He was pretty much nonverbal, yet he was flying. Good grief! I handed out schematics. And after a brief explanation of how it all worked, he just sat there and just went, dun, 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 built up a circuit on the breadboard like that. I came back and I like, common mistake. You missed this wire by 1 row, but keep going, man. So, I mean, I'm sure he was the first one. Oh, yeah. He was, way beyond natural. So it turns out the high school, which was run by WASA in town, which I had also looked at because they had a classroom of computers. I was looking for a classroom of computers with which to run my workshops because this was what I was going to do after I quit my job at CN. That was the plan. So when I moved back here to Eastern Ontario, the plan was to do those workshops. Well, I'm driving back, moving with my last trailer load of stuff back to Eastern Ontario, just as videos started coming out of Wuhan, China, of people passing out in the streets from the Wuhan flu. And we all know what happened after that. So that kind of put the kibosh on it, right? So let me back up. Let me backtrack a little now. Go back to 2012. I'm just coming off the road after doing 10 years of full-time ministry on the road with my traveling museum, did a whole mess of children's ministry, learned how to teach children complex creation science stuff, complex science stuff, and whatnot, which helped, again, further with the online courses. And I had it in my heart to make a children's creation science TV show. I was already working on Genesis Week at the time, and I had advanced far enough that I had several shows already written, and of which you're already familiar with this. Why are you familiar with this, there, Al? Why don't you tell everybody?
Well, I can backtrack and I can go way back in time as well. Maybe not as far back as you, Ian, but
Mhm.
you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to let you finish your story. Then I'm going to jump in exactly at this point, and
Okay.
I'm going to backtrack a little bit and how we kind of got connected, and then
Yep.
where we're at today. How's that?
Okay, sure. Sounds good. So in 2014, I actually did a whole mess of principal videography in the Badlands of Alberta. With all it was, I mean, it's rare you get to see a dinosaur leg bone like was exposed there when I was down there. It was phenomenal. I mean, no joke. The full thing, the whole thing. It was at least 2.5, 3 feet long. It was huge,
Right.
and it was in
Oh,
really good shape.
right.
Go ahead.
A little bit like that Tyrannosaurus Rex. Was it no, it was the oh, what was it? We saw the horn of a
Triceratops.
triceratops.
Yes.
That was pretty intriguing as well.
Yes. Yep.
Yep.
So
But
I did
sorry,
a
go
whole.
on.
Okay, yeah. So I did a whole pile of videography for the children's program. Originally, it was going to be a live action program. That was the way I was thinking. For me personally, I had never worked with child actors before. I had I had some concerns about that. I didn't know, first of all, how to do that, but I figured, I'll learn. I'll figure it out, right? But I also had some concerns about, uh, the future. We all saw what happened with Miley Cyrus. This sweet innocent girl on the TV show, and then in the future now she's a wildcat. And I have no control over these kids who will be in the show. They're going to live their own lives. So is that going to come back on me and on my show? You know, things like that. So I had concerns about that, and I was considering doing animation. And so I was having dinner with Jeff Deason, the manager of Miracle Channel. Now, Jeff kind of took me under his wing my first year producing Genesis Week. He's been hugely supportive, very, very smart guy. He's been doing television production for decades. He has decades under his belt of producing children's TV programs. So what he says is gospel truth to me. And so when we were having dinner, I was explaining, I was asking some questions about, what I would put in the show, and mentioned I was considering animation. He said, the thing about animation is timeless. And I thought about that. I'm like, you know what? You are absolutely right. Think of all the animations from the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s that we are still watching today. Animation is timeless. The Simpsons. How long has The Simpsons been on? What, 23 years
800
or
years.
something good?
801 years.
Approximately, yes. Give or take a week. And Bart Simpson hasn't aged. The town of Springfield hasn't changed. It's timeless. And there's a lot of advantages as well to producing animation. First of all, you already know what your budget is. It doesn't. You don't have to worry. I had special effects planned out and everything for my live action show because we have like a time and space traveling machine that the kids invent that I call the chrono commuter. And so there was, when I'm demonstrating the principles of. Sorry, go ahead. You were going to say something?
I was just going to say, I think that's a precursor to the flux capacitor, right?
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it was. So I started working on an animated version, and so probably, well, it was right around the time that all this went down with the online courses. So about 7 years ago now. And by the way, I also forgot to mention Wayne, who was very much like a dad to me. So 2 weeks after that initial call and setting up that experiment and everything, he passed away. So he was, and he knew it. So he was actually trying to get his house in order for Carol. And so that was kind of why he was wanting me to take over the Hyla Science Camp. And I'm exceedingly grateful because what he shared with me was radical. Still, nobody's doing it. Still. So I've done it a couple of times now. I'm still going to work on it more. At any rate, the children's show. So this going back to, we're talking 2015, 2016 now, was when I switched it to animated. What I believe the Lord put on my heart at that time, and again, a lot of this stuff, I'm looking back in hindsight at the Lord's hand working in all this, and it was just going right over my head. I'm going to hire on with CN. Oh, this will be cool. I really like this job. It pays the bills, pays really good. I mean, I'm paying more in income tax than I was making teaching at the high school, So it's like, I didn't see the hand of the Lord in this. But that's exactly what was going on. I didn't see the hand of the Lord bringing me to Sioux Lookout. But I had to be there because that's where I would meet that lady. That's where I would do the workshops. That's where I would get connections with the First Nations groups. Because in my children's program, also, again, at the same time, and I was clueless, all over my head, right over my head. So the program is called Tech Valley Science Center, which that name, that's the name of my educational center, which is the center that I'm doing the First Nations education through. Give me 1 second. I will show you. So I caught up with that lady again, and we're still sorting this out, but I want to show you. Good grief, where is it?
While you're looking, let's put a reminder up there. So if anybody, again, if you drop the feed or whatever, for whatever reason, give us a couple of minutes. We're working on it in the background. We'll get back up and running. But just check back with us at rumble.com/user/ianjuby/live. That'll take you to the latest live stream and join right back in where we left off. So
thank you.
Heads up.
Thank you. So I did catch up with this lady again. She was away on vacation at the time, but she sent me the website to the organization because I knew nothing about any of this. She just, explained to me, and I figured, okay, she's probably talking, 2024 schools or whatever, 2024 reserves, because that was about, I didn't know the exact numbers. So she sends me a map of the schools in this educational network, and I have to switch screens. There it is. This is a map of the schools. 142 First Nations schools and reserves. So, and look at where some of them are. Like this is like I think it was 73 degrees north. So in a little bit, one of the programs I'm working on has to do with kids, homeschoolers, and students. This is one of the things I was showing out at the Alberta Homeschool was the kids can build their own satellite, and this is over on Tech Valley Science Center. That's the Canadian spelling of center. It's RECENTRE. Tech Valley Science Center .space. And so basically they buy the kit, they build this Pico satellite. It's just a circuit board with a camera, transmitter, stuff like that on it. If I can get 50 schools and or homeschoolers, then together, we all put it together. We put it into a cube satellite, which I'll show you in a bit, and we launch it into low Earth orbit. And we can access that satellite as it orbits the planet for anywhere from a few weeks to a few months before it burns up on reentry, right? Amazing. So this plays a major role because there's extremely limited internet access to, well, probably half of these places, especially way up here, extremely limited internet. And this is so far north, it affects the orbit of that satellite that I have to put it up. So it limits who I can launch with and when and how, because it has to be between an 80 and 100 degree polar orbit, right? So anyway, I got sidetracked. I was telling you about all that. And then the children's show. Yes. So right around the time when all this was going down, I believe the Lord laid on my heart. So the Tech Valley Science Center, it's myself and 5 super genius kids, all living in the Tech Valley Science Center. They're all very inventive kids, and we invent things and explore God's creation using these inventions and understand science and technology through these inventions and through God's guidance and through the Bible. And one of those kids is a First Nations kid from the remote reserves of northwestern Ontario. And I've called him Jeremy. And this is actually the only character in the whole show that's actually got development, because this kid, I believe very specifically, the Lord put it on my heart to put this kid in the show, because that kid is going to, all the First Nations kids on the remote reserves will be able to live vicariously through this kid. That's my hope. And that's the vision. So he is, whoops, wrong button. So he learns chemistry, basically. He's living on these remote reserves. He sees all the water problems that have become so infamous, and he wants to fix these water problems on the reserve and bring good drinking water to his family. You know, he watches his mother bathe the baby, and you can't bathe the baby because their skin gets chemical burns. Their skin turns red from the chemical burns in the water. And he wants to fix all this. And so he sets out and he learns chemistry and civil engineering, basically, up at the Tech Valley Science Center through all this. And so at the start of every show, is similar to The Simpsons, where you know how it has a sort of the big show is different. You know how that works, right? And so we go through all 5 of the kids and myself, and it's different every time, every show opener. Well, what Jeremy does at the beginning of every show, do I have that image? Oh, I may not have put it in here. I didn't. Oh, shame on me. 1 second. I'll see if I can find it. There it is. So I'm going somewhere with this, by the way.
I figured you were. You always go somewhere with it. I'm not too concerned about that.
Okay. So at the beginning of every show, he's flying around, flying his rocket pack completely out of control, and he spells a different word in the sky in every show that's related to the show. There's a girl in a wheelchair. She's a robotics engineer. She has cerebral palsy, but she figured out that her gross motor skills could allow her, she used her gross motor skills to construct robots to perform fine motor skills for her. So she always has these crazy inventions that she's strapping to her wheelchair, which appear throughout the whole series. Anyway, so all of that being said, the children's show, even though First Nations kids in Canada probably, well, certainly less than 1%, probably 0.8% of the population of Canada, but 1/5, 20% of this show is specifically geared to the First Nations children. And again, this is all, this is just the way it turned out. When I was putting all this together, it was all over my head. I had no idea, right? So the educational program, the educational network that it looks like I'll be working with, because it's First Nations, they prefer First Nations instructors. They also prefer that instructor have at least a handle on one of the Indigenous languages, right? Well, it turns out my brother discovered decades ago, quite by chance, we're Mohawk. So again, going back, ancestry here. So it's like, so it made her day for me to be able to tell her, it's like, well, I'm non-status Mohawk. It was just kind of a family. It was a joke, a running joke in our family. It's like our great grandmother was Tyendinaga Mohawk from actually right beside you.
Right.
So that's where she came from, right? And because of the children's show, and because Jeremy not only has an interest in chemistry and civil engineering, he has a strong interest in languages and cultures, particularly First Nations languages and cultures. So I had already, because of the children's show, I had already been teaching myself various First Nations languages. I started off with Cree, because the Cree syllabic, which was drafted by, it was a missionary, actually. There was no written language for the Cree. And he came up with this syllabic, right? And a whole pile of other First Nations indigenous languages adopted this syllabic or a version of it, even the Inuktitut. It's only got 4 vowels, I, O, and eh. And the Inuktitut, you can ditch this whole bottom part of the compass because they only have 3 vowels. So they have a few extra consonants. But so this all ties together, right? And one of the reasons that I wanted Jeremy in the children's program was because of the topic today. And that is because all throughout the First Nations groups, you have legends, myths, stories, storytelling of the creation account, a worldwide flood, even the Tower of Babel. And what we're going to take a look at is the stunning parallels between those and the First Nations stories. And before I forget, just launched today. You know what? I'm going to actually call this up. Ooh, you sent me a picture. I did not see this.
I did. Part of my story we'll get into in a little bit.
Oh, okay. I'm downloading it.
You can present it.
Okay, I'm downloading it and I will present it. So, just launched today. GiveSendGo.com/Tech Valley. All one word. And it's trying to load up. I'm probably sucking up a lot of bandwidth here with this live stream, so it's probably going to struggle. Oh yeah, it's really struggling. There we go. There's one of the pictures. I've got a video up on there now. And so this is, we just literally kicked this off today. This is the fundraiser to crowdfund the kickoff of the show, get the children's show up and running. I've got an explainer video there, as well as a bunch of images from the 3D world. I now have a writing team, which I've never had before in my entire life. 11 years of producing Genesis Week. I was it. I was producer, host, writer, researcher, proofreader, and this is the irony of me trying to, I'm trying to become a polyglot. Do you know what a polyglot is?
Yeah, one man does it all.
Close.
Pretty close.
Someone who speaks or is well versed in multiple languages.
Yeah.
I haven't even mastered the English language, so it's kind of ironic that here I am literally trying to, as you'll see, I'm trying to become well versed in, like, I don't know, I think tallies up to like a dozen different First Nations languages. So maybe I should work on the English language first, but anyway, that just takes all the fun out of it. So anyway, so the link is there as well. You can check it all out. There's Tony. Remember Tony? There's Tony hiding out in the shadows. So Tony the T-Rex, in a later episode, the first season, the children discover some originally preserved dinosaur tissues. They extract some DNA. They've invented a 3D bioprinter, so they 3D print Tony the T-Rex, and he joins the cast for the rest of the shows, and that's Tony's origin stories. And can I tell everybody how your part is in that?
Absolutely.
Okay, Al does the voice of Tony. So, but Tony really only speaks in grunts. He actually speaks in grunts and pictures. I've even got one here. Exactly. And you're very good at it too. Exactly. So whoops. It won't let me move us to the side. Oh well. So Tony only speaks in pictograms, and Al does the voice of Tony for the kids show. So this was actually a scene from the original live action, where there I am filming out in the Badlands, and there's Tony the T-Rex. I had to pretend he was there and do all my lines and envision his lines in my head at the time. I forget now. Okay, so anyway, if you all could go over, and even if you can't chip in financially, if you could, please share it. And pray for us, please. I've got an actual writers team now, which a lot of people who follow me on social media will have seen. We did something that I think was unprecedented. Our writing team got together and we put together a mock writing room, and because I don't think I've never heard of a university doing this, or a college, or any TV production school doing this. And when I had a writing team for the first time in my life, I was like, how do you run a writer's room? How do you be a showrunner? I don't know. And it turns out there's like 5 people on the entire planet who have showrunner experience in Canadian television production. Because a lot of these guys, they just do all the Canadian productions, right? So I could not get a hold of anybody. I tried to get a hold of Brent Butt, the creator of Corner Gas, because obviously he's had a lot of experience as showrunner. And I was just trying to sit down with someone, and I wound up speaking with Brent Chais, who is the director of the Just for Laughs Comedy Festival in Montreal. And at the time when I met him, he was the director of Just for Laughs Gags as well. And no joke, that guy gave me more in an hour of lunch hour than I'm certain that any other showrunner, no matter their experience, would have given me. And he insisted on giving it to me for free. I wanted to pay him for his time, but the things he shared with me, and that also led to, so I had 2 writers, and then he led me to Leland Clausen, who several of the viewers may recognize that name. He's a Christian actor, comedian, stand-up comedian, and he's not only acted in several movies, not just comedies, but he did one, I forget the name of it, but he did a serious movie as well. And he wrote one movie, which I got to watch when I was out in Alberta. So I'll have to write him and mock him for that. Because it was funny. I liked it, but it was just ultra cheesy. I'm like, yes, this is great cheesiness. So anyway, we got together as a writing team with a couple of people from Miracle Channel, and we put together a mock writer's room, and we created a TV thin air, wrote it on the spot as a writing team. I don't think anybody's ever done that. And it was just so we could learn how to do this, because none of us, I contacted actors being involved in television. One of my streams is having connection issues. Well, It's only you, so. Well, it all looks good to me. But anyway.
Seems,
Uh,
seems okay on this end.
okay. Okay. So anyway, we did all that. And so anyway, I think that's about it.
Which is pretty amazing. I think, with a whole lot of prayer and people really getting involved and sharing this, and maybe if God puts it on your heart to contribute to it as well, I think, what an amazing initiative to get the word of God out through animation and through your work and stuff like that. I think it's phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So now,
I like
what do you have anything to share about where you're going? I mean, I know you've shared some of the stuff about. Oh, and I'm going to call up that picture you sent me.
Yeah. So it's slow moving simply because there is a lot of angles to this story, but I can share where we've been, how we got to where we are, and kind of where we're going down the path of mobile ministry. And
Mm-hmm.
the way this all started is my wife and I and my family, we've camped most of our lives. And back in '98, when I gave my heart to Christ, and started learning as I went, and then you and I kind of crossed paths and so on, and I fell in love with your Genesis week and your retrieval rants and your creation science, your creation ministry and stuff like that. I thought it was just overwhelmingly beautiful because I think as I was going through your videos and learning and really growing, that unbeknownst to me, and even without even me really recognizing it, the Lord's been putting a lot of stuff on my heart. And I never really understood what that was over the course of many years. But then I got more involved with CORE and with you and with other Christians and so on, and a lot of research and a lot of reading and studying and prayer. It kind of became clear a couple of years ago that, my kids are grown and almost gone. And
Mm-hmm.
what's the next step in our Christian evolution? And it took a lot of prayer for this as well. And I think it just naturally transitioned where God was leaning it on me to what my wife and I want to do, and that is to travel. But having said that, when we're traveling, we don't want to just simply travel, just enjoy the beautiful planet that the Lord has put together for us and for our enjoyment and stuff. But how do we really benefit others through Him? And it all came clear one day when I just prayed about it, and it just sort of hit me. It was like an epiphany from God, where He said, "I've got something for you, and now is the time." And then it all became clear, and this was simply a mobile ministry. But I didn't have a clue on where to start, where to go, what direction He was leading me. I just knew this is where He was pushing me to go. So as time went on, we had prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed, and then it came down to this, and this was the image that I had sent you. So we had recently purchased one of these mobile RVs, and with the plan to redo the side of it in the back and so on, with a mobile ministry message with links to social media and perhaps TikTok and Facebook and YouTube and stuff. We don't have a name for it yet, the mobile ministry. But in effect, what we want to do is travel North America in this RV, my wife and I, and speak at schools and speak at churches and speak in groups and even to individuals, and really spread the word, but also build it through social media, build up that following, spread the word, but be accessible to just about anybody that may have questions or anything
Right.
about their path and their personal relationship to Jesus and how they can take it to the next level through prayer and so on, that personal relationship. So in effect, this is the latest on it. We don't have a name as of yet.
Okay, I
I'm
was going to
working on
ask you that.
graphics.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're working on graphics for the side, we're working on graphics for the back, and we're working on the name. The latest with the actual RV is we're refurbishing the inside. We're doing some stuff um, on the outside, cleaning it up, redid the roof, and so on. The next step is just to finalize the graphics and the name, and then to get that wrap or that paint or whatever it's going to be done to the RV. The anticipation and the hope is for us to get on the road within the next year and a half to 2 years.
Okay.
Full-time ministry.
And you're bringing it up.
So it's basically
you're bringing it up here, and
I'm sorry?
you're gonna bring it up here, and we're gonna kit it out for podcasts, right?
Yes. So that was the other thing. Thanks for reminding me. I don't know if you can see in the passenger seat in the little back window in the front, my daughter's smiling at
Yes.
but she took it out for a drive the other day for the first time, and absolutely.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, that's her. Doesn't kind of look like her, but so yeah, that's the next step. Is I'm putting together. I just purchased some materials for it, but we're going to have a mobile podcast studio in the RV that we can take along with us. Mobile satellite feeds and so on, internet, and so we can be active and online while we travel. And it doesn't matter where we're going to be, US, Canada, north, south. We'll at least be able to broadcast that on a regular basis. So that's the hope. And all I ask for people is just for prayer. At this stage, I think we just need prayer as we go through all the steps and continue prepping this thing, getting it ready for the road. And then eventually, when we do hit the road full-time permanent, we'll have those social media sites, websites, and so on that people can reach out and connect with us and encourage us and pray for us as we go. And then, like you said, the mobile studio is going to be nice. We continue these podcasts on the road, and maybe a lot more in-person visits as well. So,
and you have a lot of how many people do you have on TikTok already?
TikTok, I think I'm close to 65,000 followers.
Right.
Videos
Which
are
is
anywhere from yeah, and it's moving up quite drastically every week. I'm seeing an increase quite a bit every week, and some of the videos reaching 3, 4, 500,000. The latest one there, the biggest one is 1.6 million. So the outreach is happening. I've diversified my videos. I've been touching on politics, religion. I've been touching on just about everything. My focus is going to change more towards creation and Christianity as I go. It's going to be more of that sort of focus with some highlights on different things and perhaps even snippets of the podcast as we go.
Gotcha. Right on. Okay. Well, thanks for sharing.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
So with Jeremy and the Children's Show, he's going to constantly bring to the table multiple tidbits. And so one of the questions I posed was in the ads leading up to this was, why did the First Nations people, particularly in the United States, but also in Canada, why did they refer to themselves as the red man? It had nothing to do with their skin color. And you see this theme just all over the place. The Ojibwe, all the Algonquins, the Cree, the Seneca tribes. And this is out. Have you been to Nova Scotia yet?
No, I will be in July.
Excellent. You'll probably see this then. So this is right beside the Trans-Canada Highway, just outside of Truro on the way to Halifax. So this is this nice sculpture. It's huge. And this is Glooscap. Glooscap. Now, when you're looking in Indigenous, the stories and the legends and the myths, you'll notice they all have a creation story, a flood story, the first man story, things like that. Many of them have a story of the people all being one and then splitting up. Some even describe the origin of languages, and this is one of them. This is Glooscap. But you'll notice as well, a lot of the stories tend to get almost blended together. The creation story will often get blended together with the first man. For example, the first man is the one who did the creating. So it's kind of topsy-turvy, right? But the theme is there in general. On top of that, so Glooskap is the first man in the Micmac, and he was the reason they call them the red people was because they were made. They believed, according to their stories, the creator made them from red earth. So this is where it gets really interesting, because when we go to the Bible, which Ian King recommended this book, which I'm just starting to go through now. The White Man's Gospel. Is that backwards? I can't see.
Yes.
Okay.
But I
take my word for it.
Yep. We're good.
Okay. It's the White Man's Gospel, and basically written by a First Nations guy down in Minnesota, I believe. And he was talking about how, as a kid, he was told the gospel and the Bible, that's a white man's book, white man's gospel, have nothing to do with it. There's been a lot of understandably bad blood, because unfortunately, and that's kind of the theme I was getting at in this live stream, was there has been, I'm going to call it satanic, a very deliberate satanic attack, particularly against the First Nations people, particularly in North America, but some in Central and South America as well. But a very specific attack. Now, in this case, white man was pretty much the one that was used. The French, the Spanish, and the Brits, of course. But it could have just as easily been the black man. That has nothing to do with it. It's a spiritual condition, a spiritual problem. But because there's a lot of white people who disagreed with what went down. And it was a very specific and wide-ranging attack, not just removing the children from the First Nations, putting them into residential schools, but forbidding them to speak their languages, which, and, things like participating in Native culture, like the storytelling. And so these huge losses, because now we're losing languages and culture and the stories, because as you're about to see, and I'm hoping to show everybody, the original language is what holds all the clues here, all the keys. And if you're looking at them in their original language, as far back as you can get before it's distorted over time, you'll find, I believe, that you'll find the First Nations cultures and languages and storytellings all lead to the same place. That Bible, which is not a white man's Bible. It's no more a white man's Bible than it is an Arab's Bible. Really, that's the bottom line. It's the Jews' Bible, is what it is. So you will find that these stories all lead to the scriptures. So what does the scriptures say? It talks about a creation account and how the original man and woman were created and all the animals were created in 6 literal days, thousands of years ago. It then talks about that a time when all those people, when they fell, they chose evil, they chose to disobey the creator. Then there was judgment on the earth in terms of a massive flood. And also after that, all the people after the flood were one people. They spoke one language, and they tried to build a tower to, well, for whatever reason, we're not entirely sure. You could speculate. But they built a tower, possibly to escape a flood, possibly to get to heaven. There's a bunch of things, right? But then they built a tower, and that creator dispersed them. So when you take a look in the indigenous cultures, you see all of these themes. This is only one of them. So Glooskap, the Haida Gwaii as well, have the story of the red man. The Algonquin have the story of the red man. They are all throughout the world. You see the story of the creator creating the first man out of red earth. Now let's hop back to the Bible for a second. if I can find the image.
While you're looking for it, I've also heard stories and that many of the missionaries that were first in touch with many of these really remote tribes,
Yep.
when they're preaching the gospel and they're talking about the origin stories and creation, how some of these tribes have echoed the same stories, telling that, well, we have a similar account, we have a similar story, we have similar origins and similar this and similar that. Well, these tribes were really so remote that they never had touch points with the outside world. So there has to be something to the origin story biblically to be able to that. And that's where we go to the Tower of Babel, like you said, dispersing the people, dispersing their languages and so on, spreading them basically around the world. Back then, they didn't have Facebook. They didn't have the internet and social media
what's up
to
with
spread
that?
those stories. Matter of fact, they had no contact with the rest of the world, yet they share in the same origin stories and flood stories and everything else, like you said. That is, I think, if we had a mathematician again on, like Alan, he'd probably tell you the numbers are so astronomical that they would be literally impossible.
So Indian writing is just English written backwards. What a miracle!
Yeah,
Okay,
there you go.
I'm going to come back to that. I'm not sure what you mean by that, Tino. So Indian writing is just English written backwards. Well, it's, in some ways, it's actually not. It's actually I would dare say Hebrew written backwards. But anyway, we'll get to that. But when we take a look at when we take a look in the Bible, that name Adam, the Hebrew word Adam, it actually means red. That is the meaning of the word. Why does it mean that? Because it comes from the root word Adam, which is red soil. So here we are in the scriptures, and even the very words themselves, the very name itself, he was named after the red earth from which he was made. And now we go through, and now to go here in North America, to go through all these cultures that are all separated, have different languages. Majority of them didn't have a written language, and they all have the same story of the first man was made from red earth, and that's why they call themselves the red people. Had nothing to do with skin color. Now they did differentiate. Some of them did in like the 1800s during discussions with the white man. They called them white mans in order to differentiate between them and the people who were coming into their land, right? And they called themselves redskins or red man at that point. But that whole term, which you would only get from an understanding of the culture, was that it was a red man from the red earth. This is also where red ochre comes in. And red ochre is extremely common. I totally forgotten about this actually until Manny mentioned it, I think yesterday or the day before. He was talking about how many times they would, red ochre is used in war, obviously, but in burial ceremonies, they would paint the person's body with red ochre. From the earth you came, to the earth you go. It was part of the ceremonies of the red man. So you can see all these connections, right? So Tino also, it was a joke. Oh, the book was backwards. Okay, so Tino's just commenting about how my book was backwards because I was showing the cover of the book and it was backwards. So anyway, so let me see. I was actually going to quote Tino. Give me 1 second. Let me find. I have way too many.
If you go back to that $20 bill, I think that's the one I lent you a couple of months back.
That was years ago.
Years ago.
That was many years ago. Okay, here we go. This is, I actually scammed this from Tino's presentation, which he did with. Give me 1 second. Let me reference it. And this is in the references, by the way. I've provided a link to this video. Tino did a really good job. I think you should all catch up with it. So Tino was, oh yes, okay. So this was a podcast he did with the Bath Bible Institute. And he was talking about these from the, I've forgotten the name of the tribe. Not Tanaga, Tanaga. Starts with a T. No. Lenape. The Lenape First Nations. And they had what they call the Wallam Olam. And there's a lot of controversy over their birch bark sticks, which I will actually show you pictures of, what I believe are the originals. Anyway, the link for Tino's talk, which I'm showing these screen grabs from, is in the description, as well as links to everything else. Here's the red record sticks. So they call it the red record, and I finally managed to track down a copy of the book that David McCutcheon wrote in, I think, 1978. It's called The Red Record, or the Wallam Olam, and he shows these, they call them prayer sticks, and as you can see, it's birch bark, and it is it has all of these engravings in them. And so they were allegedly translated in the late 1800s. Now, there's several drawings in here that I want to call your attention to, because there's a lot of controversy surrounding these, where they were saying the missionary that interpreted these was actually putting an English translation to the pictograms instead of the other way around. Instead of trying to translate the pictograms into English, he was trying to impose English interpretations on the drawings. All right, I'm not convinced. I've read the skeptics, I've listened. I still want to keep an open ear to them, but let me give you a couple of ideas why I think that is incorrect. And also, it's interesting to note that even Wikipedia, it's not going to let me, it won't let me switch screens, Al. The nerve.
This is where you need that second screen, that third screen, or the 18th screen.
I've caught them. So this is from Tino's presentation. So this is the second page. I want this page. So as you can see, I'm going to blow this up so we can see it. They even have, not only do they have a creation account in tremendous detail, where it starts off day 1 of creation. They have the sea everywhere. Day 2, the Great Spirit moved. Day 3, the earth was called forth from the watery matrix. Day 4, the heavenly bodies, the stars, the day of the night were brought forth. This is just, it's stunning. Day 7, humans were made. So it's a little off and differing in the timing, because of course the biblical account, this is day 6. But to say the least, this is pointing to the Bible very clearly. What's going on here is we're looking at a game of telephone that has gone on for thousands of years, because most of this was oral traditions.
Right.
And that's where it gets really interesting. But in Tino's second slide here, which I scanned from him, Lenape. Thank you, Tino. Tino's just pointing out it was the Lenape tribe. But it talks about an evil snake, a great flood, evil beings, flooding and filling. After the flood, you've got the grandfather of humanity. And notice at Turtle Island was Nanabush. Nanabush is the same, you'll see that name in Algonquin, in the Algonquin language as well. And here's that Turtle Island. What is this turtle thing? turtle comes up over and over and over and over again. The Algonquins, the Haida Gwaii, all of them. Mud also comes up, as you'll see in a moment. Mud also comes up as part of that flood story, and the recovering of it, and how the mud turned into Turtle Island, which for the North American Indians is North America. This is Turtle Island. So, but look at this. So after the flood, they have what appears to be the Ice Age documented in their history. Now, the reason I bring this up is because the theories of the Ice Ages didn't start until well after all of these pictographs, the Lenape pictographs, were translated. So people saying people that are suggesting that these missionaries imposed English interpretations on the pictograms, that doesn't jive, because the English concept of an ice age hadn't even been developed yet. And yet,
and not only that, even if you give them the benefit of the doubt, they added their English interpretation to these. Even if you did so, one would be kind of coincidence. Two, boy, highly unlikely, but we'll give them two. Once you get to 3, 4, 5, 6, it's overwhelming evidence. So much so that you can't, you can force your interpretation on many things, but at some degree it has to fall apart. Where this, it doesn't.
Right.
It matches with the Bible.
And where did it go? There it is there. The other catch here, so the skeptic was criticizing the original interpreter because he went back to his notes and he saw that he had repeatedly crossed out English words and put in new ones. And he was contending, see, he's trying to impose an English translation. I beg to differ. These pictographs, first of all, it's not one word, it's a concept. So what I've got here, let's take a look. Where did it go? There it is. So the Chinese characters, of course, they're composed of different pictograms. So it's the same idea here. It's a concept. It is just one word, but to translate it into English, you need to translate all the parts. So this is the Chinese word, the ancient Chinese word for ship. Well, the ancient Chinese word for ship is the symbol for boat with 8 mouths or persons. Now, why on earth would the word for ship, the concept for ship, why on earth would it be composed of a boat of 8 people? Well, Noah and the Ark was a gigantic ship of 8 people. So you can see the biblical account in even the Chinese characters. But this is a conceptual thing that you will only get through the culture and understanding the language and culture. And this is why it is such a tragedy that there is already First Nations cultures that have gone extinct. The languages are in tremendous danger. Well, let me actually, you know what? Let me give you an example, because I was going to go there anyway. Oh, come on. Why does it keep doing this? It keeps stopping me from doing this, Al.
Strange.
It makes me upset.
New program.
It is.
Yeah.
It's interfering. So I mentioned in the promotional Vishnu, the fish god. And here we go again with the turtle involved with the flood mythologies. So even over in India, we're talking the Hindis now, and even they have a flood legend with Vishnu, the fish god, taking on the form of a turtle to save the world basically from a flood. So there's that turtle again. Now that name Vishnu, so the word Vish Was originally, okay, if I do that, it's going to stop me from scrolling. So I'm going to scroll through the images and hope I find it again. I should have put these in order. No. Okay. Give me a second. I'm going to have to go looking it up. Lasai. Oh. Maybe the reason I can't find it is because it's not in there. Yeah, that's why. So I'll just have to, okay, I encourage everybody to look this up for yourself. So Vish, it's actually a two-part word. That Vish is actually where we even got our modern word for fish in English. And Vish originally meant of the water, and it became, it kind of mutated over time into fish because they were of the water, obviously. And that would include like whales, everything, all sea life, right? It was of the water. So fish, Vish, fish, same thing. And also poison. So it's kind of transliterated into that over the time. But the original meaning was Vish. The second part,
Right.
new and you. That is one of the spellings of the name of Noah. In fact, it's even in some of our modern day English Bibles. It is sometimes spelt that way in some of the verses. New, no, Noe, Noah, Noah with an H. And so when you look at other different cultures, and this is kind of what, when I was coming back to Tino's joke about the text being backwards. Well, in Hebrew, they read from right to left. English reads from left to right.
That's right.
So somebody who is somewhat familiar with the Hebrew characters might come along and he might see the name Noah inscribed somewhere. But it's backwards. It's O-A-N instead of N-A-O, for example. Oan. That is where we get our Greek names like Oan, Oannes, Johann, Johann, Ian, John. They are all the same name. They all mean God's grace. So Vishnu, the fish god, the turtle. I'm still not quite sure where the turtle comes into there, except that was one form of Vishnu. But Vishnu, the fish god, was literally Noah of the water. So here we have a completely other culture, which still has the turtle, still has a flood story, with some guy named Vishnu, which is clearly Noah of the waters. Let's come back over here to North America. Now, I mentioned the tragedy that's been unfolding with literally the extinction of some of the First Nations cultures and languages. The Seneca of New York and Southern Ontario, there's an estimated 25 people left on the planet that speak the Seneca language. Well, the Seneca also have a flood legend with the turtle. They put the mud on the back of the turtle and it grows into Turtle Island. The Seneca, however, if you take a look in the original Seneca language, the common word for turtle in the Seneca language is Hanua. So here we see Noah named by name again. The reason they keep bringing up turtle is because it is extremely similar to the name Noah. So you can imagine the elders, literally, thousands of years ago, telling the tale to their children and grandchildren. Here's the story of Noah and the great flood. A few generations later, hey, I don't get it, man, but apparently a turtle, Noah, was saved the world from a great flood. Here's the story. And it gets changed over time. It's like playing a big game of telephone, except it's over thousands of years. It crosses cultural and language barriers. But you would never know this if the language went extinct. And there's many of these things like the red man. It's a cultural interpretation. Yes, you can look at it word-wise, but unless you actually dive into the culture, which has been attacked over the centuries. where it's a satanic attack, trying to destroy these cultures and trying to destroy the languages and trying to remove them from us. Because look at this, it all leads to the Bible. So all these First Nations people, they have in their stories, but you need to go back to the original language. And this is one of the reasons why I'm trying to learn multiple First Nations languages, because like Vishnu, the fish god, you wouldn't understand that unless you went back to the original language, because the meaning of Vish has changed. But as you go back in time, you see that originally it meant of the waters, right? And so here we are in the Seneca language, and unless you actually hear the word in the Seneca language for turtle, they just call it turtle, because a lot of these indigenous cultures, they're interpreting their stories, their historic stories, in the English language. What I'm wanting to do, and what I'm encouraging, hopefully more of the viewers as well, to get on board as well, which is why it would be important to understand and learn First Nations languages. First of all, it keeps them from going extinct. Secondly, if you go back to the original indigenous languages, that's where you find all this gold, where it's all, even right there in the indigenous cultures, it's all pointing to the biblical account. This isn't a white man's Bible. This isn't a white man's gospel. This is the gospel of Christ preserved in your culture, but it's been mutated over time.
Absolutely, which is fascinating if you really look at it and you break it down, do the research as you have. It's phenomenal.
Mm-hmm. And again, taking a look at, I'll bring the slides up again that Tino graced us with, because my book, I finally got a copy of the Wallamolam, the red book, the red record. It was hard to get. I could not find it anywhere, and so I'm grateful that Tino shared these slides, because it's a very nice, concise interpretation of the red record. And
Right.
I won't get my book for another month. But as you can see, especially with this, the Ice Age, why would that be in there?
Mm-hmm.
Unless this was a legit record. It makes no sense. You can't say, oh, the English missionaries imposed this on the interpretation of the pictographs. It doesn't make any sense. They wouldn't have. Why would they put that in there? Why would they force that interpretation on it? It doesn't make any sense. But again, the interpretations are stunning, to say the least. Vishnu. Oh yes, Wayna Bujo. So here we go again. With my First Nations viewers who are listening, and I'm hoping to encourage some First Nations people to dive into this, because you will be.
You know what? While you touch on that, let's not forget that. What is June? What is the month of June? What does it represent for the Indigenous?
Thank you. I forgot about that.
Right? If you think about it, how apropos this podcast is, Ian.
Yes, because I did not know this was Indigenous, National Indigenous Month. I didn't know 2 days ago was National Indigenous Day until people started posting about it on Facebook. And it was already, because I'm glad you brought that up, because originally I was going to do chemtrails this week. And then earlier this week, it's like, I believe the Lord put it on my heart, no, you're going to share this week. And then the next day, after advertising the podcast this week, I find out, oh, it's National Indigenous Month? I didn't even know they had a month, And anyway, the Wayna Bujo story. Oh, that also brings up something I wanted to share, which was one of the reasons I was sharing my personal story, is because I've been going around and trying to learn both languages and culture. My cousin, who's a card-carrying Blackfoot, pointed out that the Algonquin, the Golden Lake Reserve here, Pikwakanagan, they just shy of here, they opened what they called the Indigenous Hub, and they took over a storefront here at the Pembroke Mall, and it's an outreach program. You know, you can come there, you can learn Indian arts and crafts, you can learn the language, you can learn the culture, things like that. So I went there partly to practice my Cree. Not a one of them spoke Cree. They looked at me like I had two heads because, of course, they spoke Ojibwe, right?
Right.
So they, I'm going to go Haida Gwaii first. So I was there for quite a while, and I was showing them my cheat sheets and stuff, because like I made this, to learn the Cree syllabic and stuff. I was showing them that, asking about language resources. The one the young guy there, he grew up on the reserve of Manitoulin Island. He had actually taken Algonquin in school to learn it. And as I was talking with them, I was raised a white boy. Okay, it was a running joke in our family when we found out that we had Mohawk blood in us. It really was, and I was telling them that too. As I'm going around and I'm trying to learn the cultures, I guess, because I was raised a white boy, and all three of them, card-carrying First Nations people, all three of them all just nodded their heads and said, "Yeah, me too." And that really struck me, because these were full-blown card-carrying First Nations people. They were Indian status people, and they too. And there you have it, right there. How their culture, their language, has all been eradicated over centuries,
Right.
pretty much.
Really has. Yep.
Yes.
It's funny. I've got a similar story before you continue, and it'll be very brief. But about a year ago, my wife was at an event, and she ran into a lady who shared the same last name as myself. And in their conversation, it turns out that we have a direct link. We're first cousins on my father's side, and she is Métis.
Oh, yeah.
And she told my wife that Al is also Métis. And I went, I'm Métis? And she went, yes, absolutely. You have deep roots. And so for the last year, I have been searching my ancestry to trace back. And I've got a lot of legwork to do, but it turns out there's, some kind of ancestry in many of us that we don't even know about. I just found this out a year ago.
Right. Yeah.
It's interesting.
It is. So this is on display. This is the sculpture of Bill Reed. And this is the Haida Gwaii flood legend in just stunning artistry. Man, this is beautiful. This is in the Museum of History in Ottawa. Mm-hmm. And if you get a chance to stop in, it really is nice. But once again, this is one of the literally hundreds of flood myths and legends around the globe. And it is a story of Noah and the flood, but it's been distorted over time. Instead of a huge ship, it's a really small canoe, but there's all the animals on board. And in the Haida Gwaii as well, which is similar, you'll see this in other legends. I can't remember if they had the turtle in that. I meant to look that up again. But they did have the loon and the beaver, and if I recall, the mud as well. So the Algonquin version, before I get to the Algonquin version of Waynabojo, this sculpture, which again is one of the hundreds, was on that $20 bill you were claiming. Oh, good grief. Oh, I reached the end. That's
can't locate my 20.
No. No, that's right. So this was on the Canadian $20 bill for a number of years before they... Oh, come on. Oh, okay. That's why. Because I zoomed in. That's why. There it is.
There it is. Yeah.
And so this was actually on the Canadian $20 bill. So there you go. There's another example of the Aboriginal legends and mythologies, which, if you get, especially if you get to the original languages, contains dozens of little gold mines. I'm still chasing down what the mud has to do with it. I think the Seneca word for turtle, I think that's the key there, and why they all have turtle in them is it's just been passed around basically, and it sounds like the word for Noah's name sounds exactly like the word for turtle in Seneca, and I agree that's only one language, but they're all. How else do you explain it? What are the odds that a flood legend of this tribe in North America would have the guy who saved the world from a great flood? His name is Turtle, which happens to be Hanoah. What are the odds? So things like that. So let's get to Wayne Buju, and a real nice lady helped me out. She made this today. So this was Laura Dieter made this. She does beautiful artwork. She actually made this just for this podcast. This is the Algonquin Wayne Buju legend. Now, Wayne Buju, there's a lot of stories with it, with the flood record. Once again, it involves the turtle and the story of getting mud from the bottom of the ocean, from underneath the water, the Great Flood. The point I want to make with my Indigenous people is that if you go back, especially in the Algonquin storytelling, depending on who's telling the story, the animals involved change. So it was, in one version, it's a duck. In another version, it's the muskrat. But they send multiple animals down to the bottom of the water to try and get mud to put it on the turtle's back so it can grow. So Wayne can grow it into the new land, which would become Turtle Island, North America. And so here you can see Laura's even got that. He's got the plant in his hand, and she's depicted all this just beautifully. I didn't ask her to do any of this. I just said, hey, do Wayne in your artistic style, because I really like her art style. And by the way, there's her page there. That's in the links in the description as well. So facebook.com, Laura Dieter Art. I love her artwork. So when she did this, I'm like, oh, this is perfect. This is even better than I wanted, because here he is. He's even holding the earth with the new plant growth and whatnot coming out of it. But the point I wanted to make, though, is that depending on who's telling the story, you'll notice the animals change. So there's details that change even in the present day, which is why it is so important that you go back as far as you can, as close as you can to the original language and the original story. And sadly, all of the elders, all of the chiefs are all getting old and dying. And we are losing the language, and even the stories are changing over time. So we're losing all this gold, right? So it's kind of that was the only point I wanted to make, was just to recognize that we have these stories and they have value. They're mythologies, but mythologies all have their foundations in truths. And so what are those truths? And again, as I mentioned, I think the turtle is Noah. It's a transliteration of Noah, the name.
Right. So. Right. And if I could touch on one thing, and if we could turn to the Bible, and I think when you're questioning something, you're researching something, the answers are all found in the Bible. And as we're talking, I couldn't remember exactly the verse, but I had to look it up as you're talking, and it came to me, and it was in the book of Psalm 12, verse 6 and 7. And this illustrates this entire podcast. We're talking about legends and myths, and we're talking about history, and we're talking about creation. But what does the Bible say about it? And this is beautiful. So I'm going to read it to you. It's verse 6 and 7 in Psalm 12. And it says, "The words of the Lord are pure words, as silver tried in a furnace of earth, purified 7 times. Thou shalt keep them. Or, O Lord, thou
Hmm.
shalt preserve them from this generation forever." The
Hmm.
stories may slightly change, the stories may vary from one tribe or one culture to another, but God has preserved his word. In the Chinese language, if you look at Chinese characters, there's
Hmm.
the story of creation. If you look in the Mazzaroth, the stars, you've got if you look at these legends in the indigenous, all these different tribes, you have the same stories. And I believe at the heart of it, it's God's promise to preserve his words.
Yes. And they're all pointing to that originally preserved word, which isn't a white
Amen.
man's Bible. It's a Jew's Bible, basically.
Amen. Mhm.
And
You got it.
also interesting. So Wayne Bojo, this character, sometimes called, if they're telling this story to the grandmother, this is a
Mhm.
cultural thing, and it's important. They call him Nana Bojo. So the name of the character can change. That's why you'll see, and it's different spellings too, because the spelling isn't as important in the written language as the pronunciation, right?
Right.
So you'll see different spellings and whatnot. The the neutral, gender neutral, is Manaboju or Manabuju. Sorry. But it's interesting because the first man off.
Oh, I lost you. And I think we're live. Looks like we lost Ian, but again, he's probably going to reconnect to be a couple of moments here. And if you lose the feed, if we drop the feed, give us a couple of minutes. There we go. You're back on. But if we do drop the feed, just go back to rumble.com/user/Ian Juby/live. There you go.
We're still
Live and
on.
in color. I think so. See
Okay.
the live feed, an hour 42.
Yeah. Okay. I can't tell if Rumble actually stayed on or not. I just see a black screen with a 2:13 countdown.
Let's ask in the comments, can anybody see us?
Yeah. Can anybody see us in the comments?
Just right,
My
yes.
my oh, Tino commented. My web browser crashed. I was just about to tie it up again anyway.
When technology works, it's beautiful. When it doesn't work,
Yes. Okay, give me 1 second. Let me check on YouTube. No, I think we're down. So you know what?
we're down.
We're gonna wrap it up anyway. Because it's 8:45 already. So let's go on the assumption that we are still live, and we'll just wrap it up and say thanks, everyone. We'll hang up now because my computer crashed, and I'm not even sure that we're still on. But we'll say bye. Do you have any words of wisdom before we say goodbye?
Stay strong in the Bible. Stay strong in your faith. Keep praying. Pray for others. Pray for your family, your friends, those around you, those lost and those in need, those that are searching, and those that may have questions, even though they don't express them. These are the people we want to reach out for the kingdom of God.
Amen. All right.
Amen.
Well, we'll sign off. Thanks, everyone, for coming out. And God bless. We'll see you next week. I haven't got a clue what next week's topic will be.
It'll come to you.
The Lord will tell me next week. So I haven't got a clue.
Right. We'll figure it out.
All righty. God bless.